Hey guys, it's Coach Williams here, Cassandra Williams of Cassandra Williams Enterprise, your victory coach and the founder of Wise Wives Build. And you are here for Changing Lanes with Coach Williams. Do me a favor and hit that subscribe button so that you'll be notified when we have some more amazing content for you. Tag, share, invite some friends to join in on this conversation, okay? So we're going to get started today with love and marriage, right? Did y'all just hear that song go off in your head? Love and marriage, love and marriage. Okay. So, right? It's supposed to be easy, right? Was anybody like me and remember listening to, Cinderella, Black Beauty, all the fairy tales growing up? So, girl meets guy, guy meets girl. They, may have a little bit of issue. They fall in love and they live happily ever after and they ride off into the sunset. But what happened after the credits? What happened after everything faded to black? That's the story that most of us were not prepared for. Most women and men, but mainly women, we have been planning our wedding. We knew what kind of dress. We were going to have 500 bridesmaids. We were going to have all the flowers, until we started looking at that budget. And then we were like, okay, girl, you got to scale that back, right? But the whole gist of it was our girl meets guy, guy meets girl. We fall in love. It's going to be amazing. And then we wake up the next morning and the wedding is over. And now we find ourselves in a marriage. We find ourselves in a place where he is no longer going to his house. I'm no longer going to my house. There's no, when we have, heated fellowship, as they would call it. When there's heated fellowship, nobody's going anywhere because guess what? We are here together. We are in this to win it, right? And so on today, we're going to be talking about this thing of love and marriage. My question to you is this right here. What happens to love when you get married? Because many times what happened was we fell in love, right? I fell in love with him. But what I learned growing up was if you fall in, you can fall out. So I had to learn how to grow in love with my husband. So after the dust settled, we had to learn to grow together. So, Coach, how do you do that? Right? I'm 20, y'all. November will be 26 years. We are 26 years into this. I knew him 8 years before we even got married. So technically, we're coming up on 34 years. I know, don't I look good? I don't look like I known somebody that long, have I? But listen, when you begin to fall into something, when you fall in a hole, when you fall to the ground, you get up, you move on, you do that, right? And so when we fall in love, we can fall out of love because of circumstances, right? Anybody ever been there? Have you had those relationships? Let's be honest. Have you had those relationships where you fell in love or lust? Let's yeah, both of them are L words, right? But listen, but listen, you fell in love, lust, listen, lust don't last. Lust fades. I'm just saying it's going to fade, okay? It's going to fade. But I'm just saying, you were all in. Let's just say that. You were all in until you weren't. There were people that, can I be honest? There were people that I have loved. Like I really did love them, but I didn't marry them. I'm going to say that again. I loved them. I cared for them. I wished the best for them, but they were not my husband. They were not my spouse. They were not my lifetime mate. They were for that moment. Okay. So when we begin to think about what happens to love after marriage. Because if it's not cultivated, if we're not able to grow together, it's not going to last. I may love you, but I might not like you very much right now. I know for all the deep people, I said what I said, okay? I might love you, but I might not like what you're doing. I might not like the situation we're in. I might be looking at you like I don't like you very well right now. In this moment, I don't like you. I love you, but I don't like you. And that's a real place and that's a real thing. And if you don't deal with that, that thing grows and that will choke out the love, the foundation that you do have. It makes you stop remembering the vows that you made to one another. It stops you from remembering the good times. It stops you from remembering before the kids, but before the surgeries, before the health crisis, but before the elderly parents, before all the things that have taken place in your marriage, right? And so, as I was beginning to really think about this conversation that we were going to have today, I began to think of how God patterns how he feels about his church to this thing called marriage, right? In Jeremiah 3 and 14, he talks about he is married to the backslider, right? And for many of us, we would think that's the unlovable people, right? God says, I'm married, connected. I want them to come back. The backslider, those people that we've written off many times. Because when you get to be in a backslidden state, a lot of people don't want to have anything to do with you. And God said, those are the people I'm married to. So even when we're in our marital relationships and we find ourselves in a place where this person is in an unlovable state or what we view as unlovable, God has said, I'm married to that person. I'm in covenant with them. My heart and my desire is for them to come back to me. And he's there waiting to welcome them back with open arms. Now, listen, I know some of us, we struggle with that, right? When they come back and we have to do it with open arms. Do you struggle with that? Let's be honest in this moment. Do we struggle? We struggle. Sometimes we struggle because we remember all of the bad things. But that's where the love kicks in, because love keeps no record of wrong, right? Love covers a multitude of sin. Love. And what we're talking about in that sense is agape love. That's God's version of love, which goes deeper than what many of us have ever experienced or felt. He says in Revelation, he says that the church is the bride of Christ. That when he comes back, he's coming back and he's looking for his bride, the church. So even our salvation walk is patterned after this thing of marriage. And I know salvation is free, y'all. It was. You walked up there, you gave God your heart, gave the preacher your hand, and you prayed the prayer after them, and you was saved. You was. But listen, this walk of holiness, sanctification, of being called out and being different, oh, it costs you something. There's a price that you must pay, right? And so let's talk about this right here. In Ephesians, stay with me. Don't go nowhere, because y'all know where I'm going, right? Ephesians 5. Don't turn off the podcast. Stay with me. I'm gonna help somebody today, okay? So in Ephesians, a lot of times we are stuck on Ephesians 5 and 22, where it says, wives, submit to your own husbands. Period. That's what we hear. That's what we hear all the time. That's what's thrown to us as women. And nobody probably ever goes any deeper than that. Then you must submit to your husband. But I want to read it in your hearing. Ephesians 5:22. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. And then later on it says, now as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. So as I'm submitting to my husband, I'm submitting to my husband, not just him as a man, I'm submitting to him as unto the Lord, because he is being led by the Lord, right? And then as I'm submitting to him as Christ, right? As the church submits to Christ. Because we got to get deeper than I got to do what he said. Because that's how we look at it. Oh, so I got to do everything he say. Oh, he's a ruler over me. We look at it so negative. And then in Ephesians 25, 5 and 25, he says, husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Ladies, they said, do whatever you going to do. Do it as unto God. He said, husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave his. You got to be able to die for me. What? Because sometimes we feel like we got to give more than they do. But somewhere along the lines, we stop requiring them to be the way that God wants them to be. And we started trying to make them what we wanted or what the world wanted or what fit inside of the image that we had created in our head. But what we've got to do in this conversation of love and marriage, have you submitted your spouse, that relationship, back unto God to say, God, make us what you would have us to be? Take us back to the original intent. Take us back to why you created us in the earth and then why you joined us together. Because the Bible says, whom he has joined together, let no man put asunder. It didn't say what we put together, let no man put asunder. It said what he has joined together. So that means you got to go back and say, did God tell you to even come into covenant with that person? Because sometimes we chose a thing. Just saying. Something to think about. Ask the question. Because sometimes you didn't ask it beforehand. And so now you find yourself in a place that when the vow is being tested, when your words, the words of your lips are being tested, when you promise to be with this person until death do us part, and the fire has come to test that, to see, can you stand? Can you withstand? What happens when I'm questioned? I don't know if I love them right now. It's a real place. I don't know if we gonna make it. I don't know. Well, I don't know what we doing right now. The kids are gone. They've grown up. They've graduated. They've gone to college. They have their own families right now. And here I am. I'm stuck with this person that I don't even know. I don't know what he likes. I don't know what she likes. I want to ask her to go to the movie, but she always look mad. I want to ask him to go to dinner, but he just want to sit in front of the TV. And we found ourselves falling out of love in this marriage. But what I want to encourage you to do today is I want you to remember. I want you to remember the words that God says over us. He said, I loved you with a never ending, never dying love. He pursues us. He said, I stand at the door and knock. That if this is what God has called you to, this is who God has joined you to, you stand at the door and you knock at their heart. You be willing to apologize. You be willing to say, I'm sorry. It was me. Please forgive me. And make a decision. We're talking about changing lanes, right? So you may have been doing this. You may have been running in this same lane for 20 years, 25 years. It's okay to change lanes. It's okay to do something different. Ladies, it's okay for you to initiate. I'm just, it's okay. It's okay to say, hey, sir, hey, how you doing? It's okay. It's okay, right? We grown folks over here. It's okay. I'm gonna keep it PG-13. But just hear me, ladies. It's okay for you to initiate. Husband, it's okay for you cook a meal, take us away, listen, call and say, listen, pack a bag. It's okay for you to find a babysitter and then call us and say, ma'am, get dressed, pack your bag. Babysitter's already done. Listen, sir, let me help you out, sir. That will change your life because she's always doing certain things. She wants you to take the initiative. But as we come into this place, sometimes we've forgotten the roles we play as support to one another. When we look at the head, right? The head, man is the head of the woman and he bears the brunt of the family, but we undergird them. And for those of you that are on YouTube, you can see this. So I'm going to have to talk it through for those of you that are listening to me on all the other platforms. And thank you guys so much for being here. Man is the head. So y'all see my head, right? This is the head. Man is the head. The woman is this right here. This thing right here called the neck. Okay, I know we came from the rib. We are their rib as well. But listen, let me tell you something about this right here. We are the neck. We the support system. Break your neck. Tell me how good that head is. That head is not worth very much with a broken neck. If you snap that neck, you can take the life. What am I saying to you? As much authority as the man has, the woman is just as important. And so, ladies, I want you to know you matter. Gentlemen, I want you to treat her like the queen that she is, to let her know she matters, that she undergirds you.
So I have a question. Hey y'all, it's Geri. You can't see me, but I'm here. Question. So going back to the husband being the head, what exactly does that mean? Because my husband has asked me this question. I'm like, sir, I don't know. I'm not a man. I don't know. So what does it mean for a man to be the head of his marriage or his household?
When God made Adam, he gave Adam dominion. He was like, listen, I need you. That's in Genesis. He says, I have given you dominion. He gave him the ability to name all of the animals, all of these things. And he made him first, right? Then he said, it's not good for man to be alone. So I will give him a helper that is suitable for him. God never went back and gave the instructions to Eve. It was Adam's job to tell her, and which he did. But when it came back, if you notice, when Eve ate of the fruit, we're not going to split hairs on what she ate. She ate from a tree that God said don't eat from. We're not going to fight over what the fruit was. She ate. But here's the thing, when she ate of that fruit, nothing happened. Her eyes were not opened. When she gave it to Adam and Adam ate, there, both of them, eyes were opened. Then he said, after the fall, He told man, he said, you will work by the sweat of your brow to support your family. And before then, all he had to do was go eat. Now he has to put his hands to work. So God deals with men more heavily than he does with us because they are our covering as the head. When God talks, he wants to talk to them, and they are supposed to cover us. If you even look at them, the way that their shoulders are built as opposed to women, we cover, we are strongest at our core where our womb is because we produce. So they normally get vision and they have dreams and they have aspirations, but normally we have to come and help them birth that thing, right? So that's why he'll be talking to you and he'll be like, oh my God, I want to do this and I want to do this and I want to do this. And you're like, go do it. And he's like, and then you get frustrated because guess what you have to do? You have to come under that thing and help to birth it out because he is the visionary. You are the producer. Okay. So let's look at it like this right here. I am the visionary of this podcast. That voice you just heard was Geri, who is the producer of the podcast. So I say, "Oh, this is what we're going to talk about." She comes under me and she helps me produce what God has said it's supposed to come to pass, right? And that's the way it is in your marriage. It's because there are certain things that God is like, you're not supposed to be doing that. And when, and here, okay, so let me say this. There are seasons, okay? So I said all of that, and that's the godly way, right? Now, many of us did not marry them in their godly state. What do I mean by that? We married the little boy, not the man. They were not walking in the fullness of who God has called them to be yet. So the roles have sometimes been reversed. So there are seasons where you may have to stand in that position for your household until which time the tide turns, and then you have to be willing to give up the seat. It has nothing to do with your dollar amount. I heard that. It has nothing to do with how much money you make. It has everything to do with their ability to walk in their godly authority. Because remember, I said if that broken, what if you are a healed woman with a broken husband? So now you want him to lead. You want him to be in this place that he does not have the capacity yet until he is healed as well. But it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It just means we may have to pray them through some things because there may have been some things that happened in their family. They may not have had those godly examples that taught them how to be a true man in their household. Or maybe they were taught or reared, if you will, by a controlling woman. So they never learned to be the head, never learned to have a voice in a household. And so the person that has to say that, we have to go to God to understand, because from household to household, because we would say, oh, because he's the head of the household, he's supposed to, control the money and the finances and all of that. He might not be good with money. That might not be his forte. Because she's the woman, she's supposed to be in the kitchen. She's supposed to do all the cooking. She's supposed to do, all the domestic stuff. Can I be honest with y'all? My husband's family owned a cleaning business. My husband cleaned circles around me. It doesn't mean I'm a nasty woman. It's not that. But he came from a family that had a cleaning business. I'm not doing all that. No, you. I'm not. I'm not going in every week and acting like I'm getting a check. So no. And for some of you, even in when we deal with um, ministry, and we talk about this thing called love and marriage, many of you are looking at your pastors and you're making them almost like a god, and you're kind of making your husband not even like the church or God, because he feels like he can't compare to your pastor, so he feels like he's nobody. Because here's the thing, if nobody ever let him stand in his authority, how is he supposed to? And if every time he tries to stand in his God given authority, he's compared to the next man or somebody else, and that's not what God has called him, you're trying to make him into something that God never called him to be. We're talking about love. Can you love me enough? Can you grow with me as I become? About I know I remember God was telling me, he's like, just be. And I was like, what does that mean? What does that even mean? To just be. And so I'm gonna help some men. Just be. Let her see the real you. Because when we start talking about the head and all of that, we have to be the authentic versions of ourselves. Because the authentic version of me does not have a problem submitting to my husband. Listen, hear me. The authentic version of me does not have a problem submitting to my husband. My personality has a problem submitting to people that are not my husband. My husband. Because the hierarchy of him, he responds to the authentic version of me. I respond to the authentic version of him. When we had chaos and we were kind of tussling a little bit, because we were not being the authentic versions of ourselves, with God being the head of it all. And so that's how we get into trouble sometimes, is when we're listening to the hierarchy. It's supposed to be God, husband, wife, children, and then all them other people and everything else. And so I'm going to get in trouble for this. So, ladies, most men don't get into trouble with this, but ladies, if it's God and you exalt your pastors over your husband, you're out of order. If you exalt your children over your spouse, you're out of order. And many of us have gotten into trouble with our spouse. I did it. I did it. I wanted my husband, I wanted his walk and his journey to be like mine. And so I judged his walk. I judged his salvation. Judge and jury. Yep, sure did. You don't go to church, so you can't tell me nothing. Oh, I'm saved. I'm delivered. I'm free. I help women do it through this all the time now. In Wise Bill, y'all listen. So don't be judged. Don't be trying to judge me. I made the mistake so you don't have to. Hey guys, it's Coach Williams here, and I'm here to talk to you about the Great Exchange Women's Empowerment Weekend. So, why do I have bricks and keys in my hands, right? Because sometimes we have to be willing to lay down what we have been carrying to be able to accept, right? We got to be able to accept the keys, the things that God has for us. And these two keys represent our access and our authority. So, October 11th and 12th, we are going to lay down the heavy stuff and we're going to pick up our access and our authority. This year's theme is Becoming One. I want you to meet me October 11th and 12th in the Atlanta area, the Peachtree Corners area, to be exact, for a weekend of fun, friendship, and fellowship. There'll be tears, there'll be food, but listen, I promise you, you'll leave transformed. But I did. I sat there and my husband had enmity with God because of how I acted. He had enmity. He looked at God and he said, "You took my wife from me."
So I got one more quick question. So say that you have a wife that has placed other people. I'm not even just gonna say pastors because we already know that's a thing. But with that, I think that's a podcast episode by itself that you're gonna have to do. That's between you and Jesus. I'm not in that. However, what if she has placed other people or things or whatever above her husband? How does she get back to placing him in his rightful place?
You got to cast it down. One, you have to let God deal with your heart, right? Because when God starts to, God will show you. Because a lot of times we feel like it's not for somebody to tell you. God will tell you. Someone may say something and it may enlighten you, right? But you still got to go to God. And you still got to ask God, okay, how do I make this right? One, you got to repent to the Father because now you out of order with the Father too. So God, help me to right this wrong and help me to turn away from this behavior, right? Because there's normally a reason why you've done that. So that means maybe they have been in a backslidden state, and we've forgotten that God is married to the backslider. So because he's backslidden, he doesn't go to church like you go to church, do what you do. He ain't in the prayer closet for 5 hours, you questioning his whole walk, right? And then you have to back up and be like, okay, that's I ain't got nothing to do with that. That's between him, her, sirs. That's between him or her and God, right? So once we go to God and we make it right, then pray and ask God to give you a strategy. This is the part that we oftentimes miss, is that we run to everybody else. We don't go to the person that created that person, right? We go to our friends, we go to mom and them, we go to daddy, we go to all of these other people. And I'm not saying not to get wise counsel, but I need you to get wise counsel. And even after you get the counsel, you still got to take that back to God. How do I apply what I just got? So in my case, God was like, go home. I was like, wait, what? He said, go home. What did that mean? We had a service every Friday night. Well, we had a service, I grew up in the church where you had service all week because I think they thought we was going to backslide in between
Were you
services.
Kojic?
Huh?
Were you Kojic?
I was not Kojic.
Oh, because they be having church for real. I was just
I
wondering.
wasn't Kojic, but I was non-denominational. So we had church all the time. We had Monday service. We had 2, 3 services on Sunday. We had all the services, right? We had services on Friday night. Listen, all the days that you could do something fun, we was in church. Okay, that's if you really look at it. The only day we probably didn't have something was like maybe a Monday, Tuesday, because Wednesday you was back at midweek Bible study. Okay, but anyway, so God told me, He said, go home. So we had a Friday night service, and he said, I need you to be there with your husband. And I walked in and I was sitting there, and it got to be about 8 o'clock. And my husband looked at me and he said, why are you here? He said, you don't have church tonight? And I said, no, I'm not going. I'm going to be here with you. And he got up and he walked out of the room. He went upstairs. Now I'm walking in obedience to the Lord. I'm following the instructions. And he got up and walked upstairs, y'all. Now, what you in your mind? What you say when he walked upstairs? What did y'all say? I want you to process that, because in my mind, I was like, Lord, did he just go upstairs? Wait a minute. Now listen, he ain't gonna do that too many more times. He did it the next week too. And I said, I'm not going to church tonight. He said, oh. So the third week, he said, you're not going to church? Because I had told him, I said, no, I'm not going to church on Fridays for a while. I'm going to be here and spend time with you. God told me, I said, I just said, I need to be here. So about the third week, he said, mm, what you mean? That's all I got. Mm. But he didn't leave the room. The first 2 weeks, he left the room. He left me sitting down here by myself. And I'm like, Lord, I did not stay. I stayed home for this. But what I had to do was, here's the thing. My husband had to be sure, and we're going to talk about this word right here. He had to make sure that I was not trying to manipulate the situation. He had to make sure that I was committed to what was I was supposed to be doing, meaning I was committed to my marriage. So when I told him I was going to be home, I was home, not just a couple of weeks to make it, to pacify and to make it better, and then I went back into doing what I used to do. No ma'am, no sir. If you're going to make it better and pull down that idol, you're going to have to be, I said idol, I did, because that's what you did. You made it an idol, and I had to pull all of that stuff down, and I had to submit to my husband. And guess what? I had to deal with his anger. I had to deal with how he felt about me and the church, because I had created that. So I had to eat that, ladies. I had to eat that, gentlemen. Just because there was a turning away, that does not mean, okay? Just because there was a turning away, that doesn't mean that there was immediate gratification for my obedience. Because I had been walking in disobedience and been building that thing up for some years. So it took time. So you have to repent. You have to maybe seek some counseling or some wise counsel. And then, but you cannot fix this without God. You have to go back to the person that created that person and say, how do we make this better? How do I implement? How do I apply? And then be consistent. Consistency. And that's a word we don't always like. We don't want to keep doing it over and 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 over again. We want to do it one and done, and say one time and say, I did it. I want to do it one time to prove that I could do it. But when you're talking about relationships, when you're talking about covenant, you got to be consistent. Just like with God, we got to be consistent with our walk with God. That's the way you got to be with your spouse. You got to be consistent in this thing called relationships. Because sometimes it doesn't mean the love doesn't return, but sometimes there's a whole lot of water under that bridge. And that bridge starting to flood. Okay? Because people sometimes say, oh, that water under the bridge. Listen, my bridge was flooded. And the Lord wouldn't let me burn it. So there you have it. He was like, nope, you're not gonna burn it, and we're gonna have to wait till the waters recede. But we made it. Here's what I want you to know. We made it. And now my husband has an amazing relationship with God. He has his own relationship with God, and I don't touch it. I don't sit as judge and jury. He doesn't have to do what I have to do. The way God talks to him is the way God talks to him. I remember we were talking in the clubhouse room, and my husband was in there. He comes in there and he asked me a question after clubhouse, and he said, listen, he said, Did I ever ask you what were some of the things I ever asked you to change? And I told him what he asked me to change. And I said, one of the things you didn't ask me to change, I said, but I think you went to God on that behalf. And he said, what was that? I said, you went to God and asked God to help me not live what other people wanted me to be. That I could be my authentic self and stand on my own and be my authentic self without the approval of people. And he said, I did. Because what I was telling them is I had an image in my head of a man that I wanted to create. But can I tell you that what God created for me was far better? Far better than I could have asked. I have an Ephesians 3:20 husband, right? We always talk about finances and we want to talk about houses and material things, but inside my marriage, my husband is Ephesians 3:20. He is exceedingly abundantly above all that I could have ever asked or even thought of because I trusted God. So, when we start to look at this thing called love and marriage, we have to do it God's way. And if God is not the center of your marriage, I'm just going to be honest, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you make it without Him being the center. Because listen, marriage taught me how to look, marriage and children taught me how to pray, honey. Listen, on my face, prostrate before the Lord on a consistent basis. But it's doable. And if you found yourself in a place where you're kind of and let me say this, I love marriage. I love marriage. I love the institution of marriage. I love the covenant of marriage. I believe in the partnership of marriage. There's only one Lord. Okay? Even though Sarah called Abraham Lord, he didn't lord over her. It wasn't a lordship. She just honored and revered him in such a manner that she called him that. But she knew who the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings was. It's a partnership. I don't believe in abuse. I don't believe in somebody loving you to death. I don't believe in I don't believe in that obsessive, toxic type of love. And so when you listen to a lot of things, people are talking about healthy, even this conversation, we want to talk about healthy marriages. And if they're not willing to work at being healthy, there's a whole nother conversation you got to entertain. Hear me. Nobody gets to love you to death. That's not the will of God for you. Hear my heart today. That's not God's will. And so you've got to be able, because, you know, as as she asked me the question, like, where are you? Because sometimes we've been taught that you can't leave, but there's a strength it takes to leave. Just like it takes a strength to stay, there's a strength you have to leave when it's time. And you've got to know when it's time. Now, listen, listen. Because he leaving the towel on the floor and you didn't know, and y'all is newlyweds, and now you know the honeymoon is over, and now he leaving stuff all over the place, and you know he puts all the tools all over the kitchen table and all over the house, and you walking around like, why is stuff everywhere? That's not reason to leave, ma'am, sir. That's not. We talking real stuff, okay? We talking, he's verbally, he's financially, he's physically abusive type. Real talk. And here's the thing. Those people aren't just here's the thing, y'all. Those people aren't running to get out of the relationship. They think it's love. They think they love me. And he leaving his towel on the floor, and you about to fall out because you think he don't love you because he told you no. Ma'am, sir. Because sometimes, ladies, we got to be the voice. We're the partner, so we got to be the voice of reason. Remember, balance to my crazy, right? My husband is the balance to my crazy, but I'm the balance to his as well. So there are times I have to stand as that voice of reason and say, I know I heard God say timing is not time. And you got to be able to stand in that place, okay? So I don't want nobody going extreme. We're balanced. This is a balanced broadcast, a podcast. So when I teach you something, I'm gonna teach you from one extreme to the other, and then we're gonna find our God spot in the middle as we change these lanes, because y'all be weaving in and out of traffic. Y'all know how it is in Atlanta. Listen, what's gonna happen? You gonna have a wreck and somebody gonna get hurt. So as you're changing lanes, you may have to make some changes. You may have to make some changes. You, the person that's listening to this broadcast, may have to make some changes that the other person is not ready to make in this moment. But if it's time for you to change lanes, change lanes. What does that look like? I may have to pray a little more. I may have to come out of my prayer closet. Come on out of the closet, ma'am. Stop sleeping in there. Stop sleeping in there. You got a whole husband over there and you sleep in the prayer closets. Come on out. I know you don't want to come out of the presence of the Lord. Okay, I get it. You don't want the Lord.
You're in timeout.
I'm just saying, the Lord. You've been in the presence of the Lord. Now, the Lord should have gave you some instruction, some directive, something. You got to start coming out of the prayer closet and go get back in the bed with your husband. All right, love and marriage today, y'all. That is what we have been talking about on today. I don't want to get in trouble. Jerry just put me in timeout, y'all.
It's too late. You're already in trouble.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. The saints is in the prayer closet.
They sleeping in the
They
prayer
sleeping
closet.
in the prayer closet.
Okay.
They got pillows and blankets, and they get mad and they go in the prayer closet and they stand. They're not going in there to get answers. They stand in the prayer closet.
So what you're saying is that they're hiding.
Yeah, in the prayer closet.
Oh, okay.
In the presence of the Lord. And now they want to know
Oh.
why their husband don't like God, because you sleeping in the prayer closet and not in their bed.
Oh, okay.
That's what they doing. They doing it.
That's different.
It's very different. And life, and here's the thing, the more you're married, the longer you're married, things change. I married my husband at 24. I met him when I was 16. We got married at 24. At 50, my wants, my desires, everything is completely different. And so we have to evolve. And so there are certain things. And here's the thing, I went through a season, I had to abandon all of my expectations, the dream I thought we were building, to grab hold to the one that God had for us. All the chaos was because I wanted something that I wasn't even supposed to have. And I wanted it now. I didn't want to wait for the processing. I didn't want to wait for the purging. I didn't want to wait for the development. I didn't want to wait for any of that. I wanted it now. And had God given it to me in that moment, I wouldn't have been able to handle it. I'd have killed it.
Mm.
It wasn't that God did not want to cultivate and to develop my husband, but the person that I was in that moment could not handle that type of man. So God had to wait for me to mature to a place to handle the quality of man that I desired.
That's a real thing, though.
Mm-hmm.
I'm living in that right now. It's very interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting.
yeah. It's
Y'all
not
pray
that
for me.
we like say pray for us all, because we just keep evolving, we keep becoming, we keep growing in this thing called marriage, and that's why we have to keep covering and keep casting out the fear of the unknown, the fear of, because when they start standing up and being who God has called them to be, we be looking like, what's wrong with you? And God be like, girl. I prayed one time. I said, God, I want my husband to, because of ministry, where I am in ministry, my husband went to a lot of different churches and different things because it was for my development, right? And so as I was being developed, he went where I went. And so the last place that we were, the last, the place we're at now, I said, I want my husband to lead us. I said, if there's anything else we need, that I will, I'll go get it, right? I can do what needs to be done. And so I said, this fly is a liar. The devil is a whole lie. It's a whole lie. Cause the minute I start getting right here, there is a fly that just wants to. Okay, we in real life right here with this podcast. Okay, this fly just keeps aggravate me when I got to this point, but I'm gonna get it out. When my husband got ready to, and so we were getting ready to go into church one Sunday, and I was like, I had fallen into his routine. Okay. I had fallen into his routine. And so we were getting ready to go to church, and we got to church, and the praise team had just started singing. And he turned and he looked at me and he said, if they start singing and we're in the parking lot, we're late. And I blinked and I head kind of tilted a little bit, and I wanted to say, and I didn't say it. I did not, because the Holy Spirit immediately convicted me and said, you better not open your mouth. You prayed for that. I bet you we ain't been late another Sunday, because he was leading. And had I said something in that moment, y'all, it would have set in motion a whole nother path for us. We would have had to come back to that moment, because now he's trying to do what I asked him to do, but I didn't let him do it. I tore it down. A wise wife builds her house, but a foolish one tears it down with her hands. And we oftentimes look at that scripture and we think it's we're tearing things down like this. No, most of the time you're doing it with this right here. This is how you tearing it down, with the words of your mouth. Because the minute he tries to stand up, and the minute he tries to say something, and the minute he tries to be who God has called him to be, we have something to say. We don't agree. We didn't hear that from the Lord. And because we didn't hear it, it can't be so. And so we can't stay in that place. So my question is, as you're talking, as we're having this conversation, what happens to love when we get married? And those of you that have been praying for things, are you prepared when that thing shows up? See, in that moment, it was about 9 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't even awake good. Okay, I wasn't awake good, but the Holy Spirit was, and he caught me. And he said, don't you say nothing. That's what you prayed for. So when you're looking at things before you speak, before you react, before you respond, is that what you prayed for beginning to come to pass? I want him to have a relationship with God. Why are you always reading the Bible? Girl, what is wrong with you?
Why are we like this? Why? It
I
makes no
I
sense.
don't know.
What is
Because
wrong
it's
with
always like the
us?
opposite. Or even with God, with the men, I want her to be more like this and more like that. Like one of the things for my husband, I listen. I'm a tomboy, y'all. I'm not the girly girl, okay? But now I will clean up real good, okay? But guess what? To clean up like that, I'm gonna have to go shopping. I'm gonna have to spend a little money. Why you gotta spend money? Why you buying all this stuff? For you, sir. For
Because that's
you.
what you
That's
asked.
what you asked for. You wanted me whenever I go out and I'm on your arm. You want people to look and say, oh, all right, I see you, right? I said, that's what you said you wanted. You told me for years. And when it started to show up, where you going? Outside? I'm going outside.
Somewhere.
Outside. Is you going with me? This is the question.
Oh
Okay,
my
that's the
god.
question, ladies. Are you, sir? You wanted me to look? These clothes do not can't stay in the house. These clothes have to go outside, right? Ladies, y'all got some clothes that need to go outside. Be like, these got to go outside. So when he asks you where you going, no, no, where are we going? We going out on a date. So listen, you want him to take you somewhere? Go get you some new little cute
Get you
stuff.
some date clothes.
Date clothes.
Clothes that's specifically for a date with your man.
Yes. Don't be listen. And don't let me catch y'all out here with them. You out with your man with a bonnet on. You better not.
You don't want to see me with a bonnet on?
No, I do not want to see you out. I don't want to see you out with a bonnet on anyway, but definitely not when you with your man, okay? Put on some clothes where he have to take you somewhere. And listen, and don't be listen. Y'all, okay. And we going to have to calm this down in a little bit. But listen, if all that man got is Cheesecake Factory, Olive Garden, even if you just want a good old cheesesteak, listen, still put you on some cute little tights, a nice shirt. Go get your cheesesteak. Be on his arm. Go get some ice cream. Whatever your budget allows. Okay? Whatever your budget allows. But as long as he is trying, as long as y'all are working this thing out, do it. Don't stop being all or nothing, all right? All right. I love y'all. This has been a good. This has been good, but no, I do not want to see y'all out here with your bonnets on. And here's the thing, when sirs, ma'ams, find out why, if there has been a change, I have to say this. If there has been a change in behavior, if your spouse loves to dress and all of a sudden they're in sweats, pants, and oversized shirts and they just real kind of look like they don't care, check in, because that's a sign of depression. That's a sign of something deeper going on. Now, I was a tomboy, and so I had to realize my husband didn't want me in sweatpants all the time. And then when we went outside and he looking at women, that look nice, and I'm like, "Oh, that's what you want?" And then we mad. But look at what you're doing. Look at what you're looking, right? So listen, ladies, let me help y'all out. Go to my website, Lessons from the Strange Woman. If you struggle in this area, there's an ebook over there. It's completely free. It's called Lessons from the Strange Woman. And it teach you what these women out here doing in these streets that they not supposed to be doing. But they doing it. And they catching the eye and the ear. Listen. You might have his heart, but don't let her get in his ear either, okay? Because if she get in his ear, she might get his heart. And that ain't what we want. All right. All right. Love and marriage on today. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this episode of Changing Lanes with Coach Williams. Because listen, if we're going to do this thing right, we're going to have to change lanes. We can't keep going in the lane that we're going in. If you want to connect with me, www.thecassandrawilliams.com. I would love to hear from you. info@thecassandrawilliams.com. If you are a married lady, single lady, just know you're supposed to be a wife and you want to have some more conversations, you can join me at Wise Wives Build over on Clubhouse as well as on Facebook. There is a Facebook group, and listen, we have more conversations like this, okay? But go to my website. All of that information is in the show notes. Until next time, this is Changing Lanes with Coach Williams, and we've been talking about love and marriage. Bye.